What is up, everybody? We are here live. As you can see, Howard Bender still doing boring baseball, but we will reclaim him from the hardball realm coming up after the NFL draft. I'm going to bring him back. But you know what? As much as I love Howard, I'm going to be doing shows with him tomorrow night, Sirius XM. It does give me the opportunity to bring on my friends, which is what I've been doing the last couple weeks. Today, we have Mr. Dave Kluge. Last week, we had Jim Coventry to do quarterbacks and tight ends. Next week, we'll have Pat Fitzmaurice to do running back. But today, Kluge, and first thing first, I got to ask you. So I reached out to you first before anybody else, and I said, want to come on the show?
Yep.
What position do you want to do? And in a loaded running back class, you picked wide receiver, man. So what's the deal?
I think that we could actually kind of get an idea of what wide receivers are going to do in the NFL. Running backs, man, they're so landing spot dependent. And
Right.
don't get me wrong, this is a really deep running back class. I'd have loved to talk about the running backs here. We got to call it like it is. Like outside of the top three, you got your Travion Henderson, your Ashton Jinty, your Marion Hampton. That's kind of your top three. Quinshon Judkins, Caleb Johnson, they can end up going in day two. Outside of that, it's the depth of the running back class, though, that's so exciting. And as much as we love all of these day three guys, if they land in a position where they don't have an ability to see the field, I don't know if it really matters that much. So, I'm trying not to hang on to my priors too much pre-draft because guys that I like, Trey Benson, for example, could land behind a James Conner, not see the field as a rookie. And then some guy that I
Exactly.
don't like quite as much could land somewhere where he gets a full workload. So I'm very agnostic when it comes to pre-draft running back rankings. I want to know about these guys, but I'm going to defer to landing spot pretty heavily after the draft.
Exactly. And I'm the same way. And you got to remember that like these guys get stuck for like Najee Harris just became a free agent for the first time at 27 years old because he
Right.
got stuck and they picked up his fifth year option. So you're right. The wide receiver is more fun. And there's also because most teams use at least two, sometimes three wide receivers for the majority of the snaps. There's a lot more opportunity for the cream to rise to the top. So, and we've seen it a lot of times, guys like Puka Nakua, Amon St. Brown, when they get the opportunity, it can happen. I know the odds aren't good, but it can happen. And right now, we don't know who's going to go where. So speculation's wild. So here's what we're going to do today, folks. Just like last week with Jim, I'm pulling up a tier maker that I painstakingly put together by hand. It actually was oddly easy if you want to make these. I can show you guys how, but I put the names on there because I wanted it to be easier for us. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through and kind of have a little debate on these guys, put them into the tiers we think we belong. Within the tiers, we'll even rank them from left to right for you. If you notice on the thumbnail, Kluge, I put you on the left, technically
Ooh.
ranking you ahead of me. So, the guests come first here. So that's the way she goes. But so we'll do it that way. And at the end of the day, we'll have our tiers for you pre-draft, which will obviously be shuffled around by the draft itself. Kluge and I, before we kind of laid out the rules to the game here, S tier, it's going to be guys we think are superstars. They have stud potential. A are going to be guys that we think are going to be fantasy relevant. B are guys we think are professional players that play offense here. So we're talking guys that will have a role, hopefully, on offense, whether or not they'll be on the fringe of fantasy relevant or not. They'll actually play offense instead of just special teams. C are guys we think should get drafted and might get an opportunity, but maybe they are those round 4, 5, 6 guys. And then tier D guys are guys that we're just not interested in at all, and we're not really super pumped on, and might not even get drafted. One rule that I'm making up on the spot that I didn't talk about you before, Kluge,
All right.
is you're allowed one double stamp. So when you and me are going back and forth, and I say this guy should be tier B, and you say no, this is a tier A guy, you can bring in your double stamp. And as everyone knows the rules, you cannot triple
Can't.
stamp a double stamp.
That's true.
So you go ahead, and if you really feel strongly, you get one of those, and we'll go through. So you ready to jump in? Why don't we jump into it? Because we got 20 guys here and about 50 minutes or so. So a couple minutes per guy. And if you really don't like a guy, we can very simply just say tier D. Let's move on because I want to talk about somebody else a little more.
Yeah, fair enough. Who do you want to start with?
Let's go. So it's sorted them alphabetical order, and I think that's a little more fair than just going like let's start at the top and go through. So why don't we start with this guy here, Elic Ayomanor. He again, when he says his name, it is it goes so smooth.
Alic?
Obviously, it's
Alic Ayomanor, I believe.
Ayomanor, but when he says it, he like doesn't even say the Y. It just like it comes out so smooth, and I listened to it 100 times, and I can't say it as smoothly as him. I just
Yeah.
it's Elic Ayomanor. He's like Ayomanor. I don't know, but
It
uh,
took me a half hour of, like, practicing in a mirror to get Giannis Antetokounmpo right, so y this is what we gotta do, it's a part of the game.
I will legitimately root against players that like have a name I can't say. And there are names also that I've just been saying. I just say them fast. Like even now, I'll say Alvin Kamara because like I don't know necessarily if it's Kamara or Kamara. I just like rip through it Kazeki. You know what I mean? So that's a little radio trick for you guys out there. But he was born very interesting path for this guy. I'll give the intros and then you go weigh
Yeah,
in and I'll
yeah.
give my final thoughts. So just kind of a the what I know on the guy from Canada. Actually moved out here to Deerfield, Mass, where they do have there's a couple like football academies up here that people go to for like an extra year or two that actually do produce pretty well. So he went to Deerfield, ended up going to Stanford. He's a big X wide receiver, plays out wide, seems like a sharp kid. So, what are your thoughts on him up front?
Yeah, he's got the prototypical size for a wide receiver one, and I think that's the thing that I get most excited about here. And he's got magnets for hands, but the athleticism leaves a little bit to be desired here. And he makes up for it with savviness and good uh, ball skills and body control, but you don't really see the after the catch abilities. You don't see him burning people out there. So I've got him in what would be tier B, which is kind of tier 3 because we've got the S tier up there. So I think that he'll probably end up being a day 2 pick, and given the right circumstances, I could see him developing into a guy who can kind of be a secondary or tertiary option on the team. But I don't know outside of his size if there's any like super desirable trait with Ayominar.
Right, like he's such, and I think B is a good place to start with him. We reserve the right to move guys around if we want,
Yeah.
left or right, up or down. It's our chart. But I think you nailed it in that like he's such a Stanford guy, right? Like a
Mhm.
cerebral, smart player, but and that can translate to the NFL. We had a lot of guys come out of there like Richard Sherman and a lot of these guys, but you also get guys like Michael Wilson that come out and they're just like a professional that plays on the outside and
Mhm.
plays a lot of snaps. But like in fantasy football, we need the top 24 guys. And when you start looking at the guys in fantasy points that finish like 25, 26, 27, 28, you're like, when did this guy even score these points? It really does feel like you need winners. So the tier B guys that are professional football players, in my opinion, sometimes don't have that kind of upside for fantasy. I think that's a really good spot for him.
And I think the upside for Ayobanor is that he could use his size to be a red zone target on a team. And like,
Yes.
it might not be pretty. I don't think he's ever going to be a 30% target share type of guy, but he can be one of those guys, Nick Westbrook Akine ish, that could just randomly finish with double digit touchdowns. And you're like, oh my God, how did I get wide receiver 2 production out of this guy?
Exactly, and that's the thing is that, like, I hate to say, the Stanford it's not Michael Wilson's not really a comp, could be but the fact that he went to Stanford and he is a guy that just scores touchdowns, it kind of
Mhm.
is that type of guy, but I don't
Right.
know, he's definitely got some upside. He could there's a world where he could end up being a weekly starter, but I
Mhm.
think B is a good place for him to start. So the alphabet has brought us a very interesting player at number 2 here, divisive player, and that's Jack Bech. LSU, he originally was a tight end, but I mean, didn't even have the size to really be a college tight end, let alone an NFL tight end. So converted to wide receiver pretty quickly. Played a lot of slot early on as like these like converted tight end guys do, but then when they moved him out wide, looked really good. So like, are you in or out on this guy? Like he's like one of those guys, right? You're either in or
I
out.
I am in on him. He had a first of all, a really surprising relative athletic score, 9.51. I mean, that is a 95th percentile athleticism. I don't think a lot of people expected that from him, but when you watch him play, like he is a very natural athlete. He's a fluid mover, a fluid runner. But what really jumps out to me is that there's almost no wasted movement. I mean, every step he takes, he's either working upfield or using it to gain leverage on the defender. He's just a very smart player. Alfredo Brown, my co-host over on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I give him a lot of crap, but he's a pretty sharp guy, and he told me, he said, when I'm watching Jack Bech, I can't help but see Puka Nakua, and now that's all I can see when I watch him play. He's this
Interesting.
long strider with really strong hands, very physical after the catch. So I've got him in tier 2 as well, but let's put him to the left of Ayomanor. I do prefer him slightly ahead of Ayomanor. So I guess that would make me a believer, right?
That's spicy. I will do it because I'm actually gonna move us here and make this a little bigger. How about that?
Yeah,
Uh,
let's do that.
yeah, might as well for the kids. I will do it, or maybe we can even make this bigger, even more so than it is. Do we like that? I don't know if I like that. I like it like that. That's good.
There you go.
Uh,
That's perfect.
so yeah, just a little behind the scenes, in front of the scenes for everybody. The thing is, I have those guys in a similar tier. I think I do have Ayomanar slightly ahead, but not far enough ahead that I'm not willing to compromise on this one. I think B is the right tier, and I'm willing to put him there. I'm not willing to call him Puka Nakua, as your Florida brethren will. But I think that these guys are always intriguing to me when they convert from a different position,
Mhm.
because there's something to be said for the like at that's a high level of football you're playing, and for him to convert to a different position, I think that gives him some of the benefit of the doubt. He played at TCU, which they play decent competition, so there's more upside to be built into a player like that.
Yeah, and I
Next,
mean, he was the guy at TCU too. I mean,
right.
had over 1,000 yards receiving last year, led the team in targets and receptions. He really got off to a little bit of a slow start, but then just continued getting better and better as the season went on. I think the upside for him as kind of a guy that you can plug in as a flanker or as a slot, even put him in line. I think that that versatility is going to be pretty desirable for NFL teams.
Right, and I never knock anybody that gets recruited to LSU, Ohio
Mhm.
State, Alabama, and then goes somewhere else because, dude, those are the wide receiver factories. You know what I
Right.
mean? LSU and Ohio State. I mean, barring besides Terrace Marshall, every player that's gone to those two schools has been incredible. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, next one here, Isaiah Bond. This is an interesting one. Again, this is another guy fits that mold, right? He started at Alabama, transferred to Texas, played alongside Matthew Golden and Gunnar Helm. So, like, other guys are expected to get drafted. Other guys that put up 700, 800, 900 yards, none of them put up 1,000. And then, Quinn Ewers is a quarterback, divisive, to say the least, on whether people like him or not. Also, some character issues now all of a sudden floating around. Yeah.
More than
uh,
character issues, potential legal issues as well. Yeah.
potential legal issues, and again, but the thing is with that, we've seen guys get pushed all the way down, turns out to be nothing, and then that's kind of how you find late round breakouts. But if people like this guy enough to draft him early, I don't know. I mean, where are you living with him?
I mean, this is off to a boring start right now, and I'm sorry, but I'm throwing this guy in tier B as well.
Right.
I've got
Yeah.
him to the right of both Jack Bech and Ayomanar. I mean, the explosiveness is undeniable when you watch this guy take off. I mean, it's funny. He actually had a really good combine, but because he said he was going to set the all-time record and then didn't set the all-time record,
Just
kind of have this perception that he didn't do well at the combine when he did. He just didn't have the best combine ever.
right. Well, I worry about that kind of stuff and those guys because it's like, Jermaine Burton and Jalen
There you
Polk
go.
was saying, "Oh, I have the best hands ever," and then he had like 9 drops or whatever. It's just like, if you can back it up, great. If you can't, it goes south pretty quick. So I think high risk, high reward player for sure.
But like you
Uh,
talked about, I mean, I don't want to get too much into like morality and all that on this show right now, but like once you get into day three, if you look at the guys who have found success with day three draft capital, it's guys who have fallen for character
right,
concerns, like Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown, Stephon Diggs. So, not saying that Isaiah Bond is assuredly that good, but if you're using draft capital as kind of your
right.
guiding metric for rankings after the fact, I think if Isaiah Bond falls into day three, you kind of have to put a little asterisk next to that and realize why he fell.
Pull up the top 10 wide receivers from day 3, like, all time in fantasy points,
Yeah.
and, dude, it's like AB was crazy. Brandon Marshall had mental health problems as well that he actually got addressed, which is good. Stephon Diggs had crazy red flags, went to Maryland, like you said. Pierre Garcon was day
I
3,
love that that's Stephon Diggs. He went to Maryland.
went to Maryland, but he also was like he like pushed like a ref, and it was hurt the
Mhm,
whole time.
mhm.
Uh, Pierre Garcon, who's like top 5 in fantasy points for guys from that level, went to Mount Union, right?
Yeah.
Julian Edelman was a quarterback. It's like these guys. When you sorted by fantasy points, you realize why these guys fell, and when you take those guys out of the equation, the hit rate is so clearly below 5%.
Yeah.
That's
I
why
mean, it's 0. Yeah.
it's like zero. Yeah, it literally is. Amon-Ra St. Brown, whose dad is crazy and was like making these kids eat meatballs for breakfast. And his brother said, like, I don't stretch, I don't stretch at all because a lion doesn't stretch. Like, there's like so many, like, the only pure guy is Puka Nakua. I just don't, he's like the
Right.
only one, so. Anyway, we gotta pick up time here. Pat
Let's do it.
Bryant, Illinois, got better each year. Didn't really end up being like great, but had his best year as a senior. Probably the best thing going for him is he's 6'2", over 200 pounds. So can probably tether his foot to the line, place a split end. Unless you have something even more exciting about this player, I don't know about.
No, I've got him in tier 4, so this guy's going to be below the other guys that we have talked about so far. The big play upside is there, and what really jumped out to me as well is that if you start looking at contested catches from last year on PFF, he had one of the best contested catch rates. He had one
Right.
of the best quarterback rankings when contested or when targeted on contested catches. So, just a physical freak. It takes him a bit of time to get up to that top speed, but after a few strides, when he's cooking, I mean, he's just a freight train. Nobody's really catching him. Um, but I think he's still a little bit thin. He'd need to put some weight on to really develop at the next level. I think he's one of those guys that you can kind of plug in and try to trick defenses with getting deep every now and then. But he's not somebody that I see as a well-rounded receiver that can do much more than that.
Right. Could end up being like a guy that gets snap. Again, there's a lot of these like bigger guys that get a lot of snaps but don't get a lot of targets. Like I hate to say like Demir Bird, but like there's guys like that he could potentially develop into that kind of guy. I just don't know. I don't know what the volume is like for a guy like this. But contested catches are a good thing. Rashi Rice led his class in contested catches. We know guys like Terry McLaurin and Nico Collins make a living off it. So well, I'm happy with him in C. I think it's a good spot for him. All right. Luther Burden. This is a big one here. Very interesting guy. A lot of manufactured touches. Some questions on work ethic because of his profile. Probably ends up being high risk, high reward pick at the NFL level, and
Mhm.
then of course naturally that makes him high risk, high reward pick for us. But the ceiling is undoubtedly there. So like Burden, where do you fall, man?
Yeah, this guy, we were talking about him as the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and then it came out that all of his touches were manufactured, and people have used that as a huge knock against him. But guess what? In the NFL, when good teams or good players are on teams, they try to manufacture touches to get those players. And you go back and you watch these Mizzou games, there was a clear issue with Brady Cook on pushing the ball downfield. So I think they kind of had to force the ball to him in ways that might be unappealing, but no, he's a tier A guy for me. So that's second tier. I still think the upside is so high there that if he does take those developmental steps forward, and if they can get the ball in his hand consistently, I think his abilities after the catch give him a Jamar Chase type of ceiling.
Right. Like there's certain coaches, like put it this way. The team that leads the league in wide receiver screens every year and wide receiver plus tight end screens every year is the Kansas City Chiefs, and they go to
Right.
the Super Bowl every year. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
like there's clearly it works. The teams like the Dolphins call like 60 a year. So yeah, manufactured touches are good. Like it's not like we're talking about Wandell Robinson here where it's like just junk. Like I mean, you know
Right.
what? Maybe it will be, but like, you know what? I'll take 11 targets of junk. Like at least that's something I can trade away. So I think A or S is a good spot. I think that eventually, when we get to some other players on this list, we'll have that debate about whether Burden should be an S or A. But I think A
Yeah.
is a good spot for him to live for the time being.
I actually had a little mistake too. Bryant, I think I said C. He was supposed to be in D. I've got him as the last year. I don't know if you've got a strong take there, if you want to push back on it, but
That's not. I'm not. That's not worth a double stamp for me, buddy. I'll put him wherever we can move him to D for sure. Which is like but that is like special teams undrafted though. So,
I think he ends up
but
being a late
maybe
day pick. I think
yeah.
Pat White's one
Okay.
that I'm not totally sold on.
Okay. So, okay, we'll put him there. Now we got Emeka Egbuka out of the Ohio State tight end. Sorry, wide receiver factory. A
Mhm.
lot of slot, but I think this guy can also play flanker. So we're talking like the guys like guys like Chris Godwin, Cooper Cup, Lab McConkey. I'm not saying that's this guy, CeeDee Lamb. Even they play when it's three wide receivers, they play the slot, and
Right.
then for two wide receiver sets, they stay out wide. That is the entire difference between being Cole Beasley or Tyler Boyd or Robert Woods or being these guys. And we briefly saw Tyler Boyd and Robert Woods play that role where they get to be the slot and then play out wide in two wide receiver sets. And both those guys had 1,000-yard seasons, right? Good careers. Like those guys
Mhm.
are millionaires many times over. So, like in terms of whether this guy will be a successful NFL player, I think he will be. Now I want to hear from you.
I
in
love
terms of
Egbuka.
fantasy football. You do.
I've got him ahead of Luther Burden, so he's in that same tier A, but to the left
Ooh.
of Burden. All the things that you said.
I'm in. I'm willing to do that. I like that.
Yeah, and for all the reasons you said, I mean, he's a very good real life football player, and I think that if he gets that role where he's just never coming off the field, that's the type of role that we want to see, where he can get those high volume targets out of the slot, and then he could also get the high value targets when he moves out to flanker. There's so many teams that he can fit with, and I
Right.
love players like this that do the dirty work as blockers because that gets them immediate full time abilities as a player. And we've seen that with, Amon St. Brown is another player that when you were talking about these guys who can kind of play both roles, you didn't mention him, but he's another guy who kind of carved out his role as a rookie as a good blocker. And then those blocking snaps turned into routes and those routes turned into targets. And then he became Amon St. Brown. I think Egbuka kind of comes into the league kind of like a year to Amon St. Brown. He doesn't need that slow developmental plan. You can just plug him in as an every down player. He's a ton of fun, vicious after the catch. I think the ceiling for him is so high.
So high, and also this is the exact kind of guy I love to if I don't get him in the draft, I love to trade for them after like a year because I look at guys like I was saying, trade for Chris Godwin, JSN, Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, because even CD Lamb played 94% of his snaps from the slot as a rookie, but they had Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper, so he was not a full-time player, and he finished like wide receiver 24, right? So like if you don't get him, try and pry him away if he starts out as just a slot guy,
Mhm.
because eventually they have to make decisions. Do we pay the older guys? Do we believe in this guy? And a lot of times those guys grow into a bigger role. JSN happened last year. I think potentially could happen for Downs and Jaden Reed. They're gonna have to pay those Packers guys. They're gonna have to pick and choose at some point. Like, so this is a guy that not only do I like drafting, but if you don't get him, don't give up on trying to get
Right.
him. So S tier, A tier is a good spot for him to live for now until we get to some decision points coming up. Next one here, Tai Felton out of Maryland, not a school that I have already disrespected once on the show. I will not do it again. Go Terps! They have one of the that Maryland flag is so cool. I'll give them that.
It is. And
You know,
the helmets are pretty cool
helmets
too.
are cool. Old
Gotta give it
Bay,
to 'em. Yeah.
great. So a lot of good things. Fairly low BMI guy, tall and lanky, Devonta Smith-esque. Did break a lot of tackles from what I watched. Primarily played out wide. Where do you live? Where do you live on Ty?
You might wanna double stamp this one because I'm a little bit higher on Ty Felton than I think a lot of other people are. I've got him in tier B. After Isaiah Bond, he actually, is the back of that tier for me. When I first started watching him, I thought that he was kind of nothing but is this tall burner. Like you said, 6'3", under 200 pounds, he can really fly. But then the more I watched, I saw that there was a lot of creative usage where they were trying to get him the ball on end arounds and jet sweeps and across the middle of the field and feeding him on screens. And that kind of made me realize that he is a lot more than that. When you said the Devonta Smith comp, I think that's a perfect comp, with the body composition especially. And when you look at Devonta Smith's frame, you think this guy is surely going to do nothing but get deep downfield. And then you watch him play, and he's winning at every level of the field, and he's making plays after the catch, and he's juking defenders in the open field. And Ty Felton can do a lot of those things. So he has been a big riser for me. It just seems like the more I watch, the more I just keep moving him up in my rankings.
Right. And you in the modern NFL, like and Tyler Lockett really brought this to the forefront, but Julian Edelman did something too, is that like if you it's okay to go down and not get crushed. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And now you're seeing guys, Devonta Smith, these guys like take care of themselves a little bit more and not to take the big hits. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? Like if it's there, go for it. If not, don't you don't need to get destroyed by a 225-pound safety. So like these guys, if he can play that way, I'm not as worried about some of the low BMI guys, unless they're like legitimately tiny, which there are a couple of those guys. I mean, like Tank Dell, very small and has dealt with serious injuries. So we'll discuss there, but that's not this guy. I mean, like he's 180 pounds. It's just that he's tall and not like built that way. So I'm fine.
Exactly.
I'm fine with him there. I'm not. I actually probably would have had him in a similar spot. Actually, I think I have him in mind in tier C, but at the very top. So I'm cool with that spot. Matthew Golden here. Again, this is the year of like the kind of divisive players. It's funny. Isaiah Bond said he was going to be the fastest dude at the combine. His teammate, of course, was super speedster, never had big production. And it's so funny the people that love like Bond and Golden and Gunnar Helm. like almost de facto have to hate Quinn Ewers, right? Because it's like,
Exactly.
yeah, so it's just I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? Like Quinn Ewers is not helping my fantasy teams. I'm rooting for the pass catchers. So where do you live with Golden?
I've got Golden in that same tier as Bech and Ayomanor and Bond and Felton, but I've got him one spot, or I've got him at the top of that tier.
Yeah.
And he's a guy that I wasn't crazy about when I watched him. I saw Isaiah Bond regularly being the better receiver of the two. I'm kind of surprised by a lot of the smoke that Golden is getting right now. People talking about him going 12th overall to Dallas, people talking about being the top 20 pick. I'm not really there. I think that there are a lot of limitations in his game. His breakout really only came when Isaiah Bond got hurt late in the season. I think people really get blinded by the 40 time. And after the combine, everybody was just goo goo gaga for Matthew Golden because he smoked the 40 time. But it seems like that steam is starting to die off a little bit now. I think he's a fine receiver. I'd expect him to go somewhere in round 2, but I'll be really shocked if he goes as high as some people are hoping.
People have him going in the first. I'm cool with having him here. He's either B or A for me. If he gets the draft capital, then for me, I'm just gonna, move him up, take the shot there. But you're right. I have heard the narrative from some people. I don't want to attribute it to him if it's not him that said it, but I'm fairly confident that Thor Nystrom was basically saying that like
Yeah.
they wanted Isaiah Bond to be the guy, and then he just kind of character issues and injuries kind of forced Golden to be the guy. And I worry about that because he didn't really even get to 1,000 yards, and Gunnar Helm, like as a inline blocking tight end that blocked on like 16% of his pass plays, was still like taking a lot of production from these wide receivers. And like, I don't know. I would just, and again, you can blame it on Texas, you can blame it on Quinn Ewers. I think that that's viable, but to really love this guy, you almost need to hate. You have to hate to love any of the pass catchers. You have to hate what Texas did in Quinn Ewers, and that goes for Helm and for Bond. Right?
And if you'd like, I mean, what we can do, this tier I have here is kind of a big one. So we could almost even draw a line like in between Golden and Bech, because there's, if you wanted to move Bech, Ayomanor,
We
Bond, and
have that
Felton down,
line. We have that line on the chart. It's the line between A and B, and we could move
perfect.
Felton down to C. I think we're going to have to eventually move some guys out of B. So I think what we should do
I think that's what we
now.
should do from Bech, Ayomanor, Bond, and Felton. Let's drop them to C right now, just so we don't have like 12 people in this one tier that I have, because
Well,
there's kind of too many tiers in there
Well,
for me.
let's see how we go.
All
Here's
right.
what I want to do is let's load people in there, and as the cup fills, we can
Then we can,
overflow guys up or down because
boom.
maybe we move Golden up to A, maybe we move Egbuka and Burden up to S. So we'll see how this cup goes. But you're right, B's getting a little too full. I'm here. I'm gonna do this right now.
There you go. There you go. Now it's a little more balanced. All right. I
I
like the
think
look
that
of
that,
this.
that was going to happen anyway. That was
It
going to happen
was.
no matter what. Because coming up now, we got a guy, Tre Harris. Again, Ole Miss guy here. Great production his last season in only 8 games. And again, this is another guy that can play out wide. Not everybody is big enough to really tether their foot to the line. 6'2", 205. So this guy can be a split end at the next level. Tre Harris.
You know what? I feel like I go on shows and talk about Tre Harris all the time. Where would you put Tre Harris first? Let me get a heat check on this before I tell you where I'd put him.
I like that, man. I do like Tre Harris because there are people that don't. The people that don't like the lateness
Ole
of the
Miss.
breakout, the people that don't like the Ole Miss, the people that don't like, but like the production in that final year is so good. And when you watch him, it's not junk. It's not definitely not a PPR scam. Like I think this guy, he has to be in tier B for me for sure. I would probably put him uh right there with Golden, potentially after Golden, but I would be cool with going ahead of him. Are you in or out on this?
I've got him on tier A. I've got him right behind
Yeah.
Burden. I've got in my tiers, the way they're broken up, I've got 4 players in tier A, and Tre Harris is at the back end of that one. I mean, the first thing that jumped out to me when you look at the analytical profile is that he averaged over 5 yards per route run last year. That is just ludicrous, over
Right.
5 yards per route run. But the other big thing that jumped out to me is a lot of people said that he was kind of this contested catch merchant, that he struggled to separate a little bit. And that was true early in his career. But I looked at his rate of targets that were contested through every single year of his career. He was over 30% for his first 4 years in the league. And then last year's contested catch rate dropped down to 17%, which tells me that he became much better. I mean, he was doing that on the same limited route tree that he ran his entire time at Ole Miss, but he saw a huge jump in his ability to separate. I just see this guy, like you said, 6'2", over 200 pounds. He's physical. He's got the speed. He checked the boxes we want to see at the combine with elite athleticism. I am such a big fan of this guy. I've been mocking him at the end of the first round, but I'd be really shocked if he falls outside of the second half of round 2.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And again, same with the second half of round two. There's a lot of teams there that could use a bigger bodied player, right? Like
Mhm.
I look at Jacksonville Jaguars. If they keep their spot in the second round and they want to use that same offense that Liam Cohen used with the Buccaneers, then they're going to need a big body guy, right? Because you want to use
They
Bryant,
need that X receiver, yeah.
right? Then you want to use him in the slot. So entirely possible that a team like that jumps, and they're not the only team. And there hasn't really been a lot of big split ends the last couple classes. So I like that spot a lot. That said, coming up next here is the prototypical big split end of this class. Jayden Higgins, 6'4", 214. He's the big dog. I've seen comps all over the place, because his name is Higgins, everyone's like, D Higgins.
I mean,
But
you'd
like
think they're brothers if you just watch the two of them
it
play.
is kinda you know what I mean? It's
Uh,
kind of annoying that that is the case, like, that he is, like, kinda built like that, like Courtland Sutton. I have heard some, like, downside comps of, like, Denzel Mims, that maybe he's not as, like, thick, maybe the word, or just, like, dominant, but, like, I think if that's the type of player you're looking for, the big split end, 6'4", 215, like, that's it. So, where are you living on Higgins, man?
I've got him in tier B. You could sandwich him between Golden and Bech there. And I don't want to say he's been a faller because I think that's like a pessimistic outlook for him. But like when I first watched him, you look at the size and you look at just his abilities on the field. He's a guy that like when you just watch the highlights, you're like, this guy's going to be the best wide receiver in football. Like this guy's got to be the wide receiver one in the class. Then you just start to watch a little bit more. You realize that it was really a hyper funneled offense through him and Jaylin Noel. I've actually gotten to the point now where I move Noel a little bit ahead of Jayden Higgins. I think the upside is there. Of course, a guy with that type of size and athleticism, but sometimes I get a little bit worried that he relies too much on the athleticism. He doesn't have the best burst or twitchiness. He kind of leans on the physicality and size, and a lot of times that works really well in college, but doesn't always translate to the NFL. So I
Right.
see a really wide range of outcomes here for Higgins. He could absolutely develop and become a stud, but I think that he still needs to work on some of the finer points of the game.
Yes, and the thing about these players from both an NFL, I like the spot for him just because I think that in the right role, he could be a full-time player from day one. Because these guys do, when they get the right role, they get 90% of the snaps, right? Because you're
Mhm.
just an every down, tether your foot to the line type guy. Now, the problem you run into with these guys is that T. Higgins does not offer anything else except for that. Like, that's his role, that's his
Yep.
job. This guy's not going to be a special teams player. He's not going to contribute there. He's not going to return punts or kicks. He doesn't. You're not going to put him in the slot unless it's like a big slot type like setup. And I don't think you draft that guy for that. I think you draft him to play out wide. And when these guys fail, they fail so hard
Right.
that like N'Keal Harry, there's
I
no
was gonna
job,
say you're a
right?
Patriots fan, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like there's no job for him. Hakeem Butler, like if he's not going to be your starting split end, there's no
Kevin White.
job. Yeah, Kevin White, exactly. There's no job for him. So if it doesn't work, it goes so bad. But in fantasy football, I don't really care about the floor because the floor
Mhm.
for all these guys is lava. So if I'm willing to go for the upside, but I can't put him in the next group because he's just not that good at that job.
Right.
So I think that's the right spot for him. I think Isaiah Bond might be coming down to tier C here. As a guy, I think we can justify it by saying tier C are guys that we think fall to day 3, but we're willing to take stabs on them
Right.
because of the profile. And then tier D are guys we think fall to those tiers, and we don't care, right?
Late day 3,
Right.
special teamers, UDFA coming in, yeah.
Exactly. So I think like Bond could fall like because of the character issues, I think he could easily fall to there. And then that's a guy we want to take a stab on, just like Felton is a guy we want to take a stab on. Whereas guys below that tier are guys we just don't care about. So this is the thing about these. It's our tiers, so we can do whatever we want. And I
Right.
think that's a good way to do that.
Next guy we're
Uh,
gonna talk about is a guy who's probably fallen to day 3 that I wanna take a stab on, which is exactly where we fall in tier C, right? I'll put him right behind Tai
Perfect.
Felton. Tory Horton, man,
I like watching this guy. I don't know
Same,
what it is. I don't know what it is.
same.
I enjoy because there's certain guys I know they're productive and I know they're going to be productive, but I don't even like. I don't. This guy's fun, right?
Mhm. And, being a guy who lived in Fort Collins for a while, I've seen Tory Horton up close. Everybody at CSU loved the kid. So, I've been watching him for a few years, but he's just so smooth. And like, he doesn't have the hyper elite athleticism, but he did check the boxes that we want to see at the combine, and actually better than I expected. I thought he was going to come in a little bit under whelming with his athleticism, but look good there. Just such a smooth and fluid player. He's got a catch radius the size of a
Yes.
barn door. I mean, you throw anything anywhere near him, and he's coming down with it. So, where you got him right there in
I
between
want to put
Bond
him here.
and
I want to put him here. Yeah.
yeah, right in between Bond and Felton. That's where I've got him.
Yeah.
And it's weird. He's one of those guys that like nobody seems to really be talking about. Which he was productive. He was athletic, and he's got very refined technique. But for whatever reason, we keep just kind of pigeonholing him into this day three guy. Wouldn't surprise me if a team takes a shot a little earlier.
Injury, man. The
Yeah.
injury, they just disappear, and they're not on our. They're not at the combine. He didn't do the combine, right, or the pro
No,
day?
he
No,
did.
he did. He did. Yes,
Yeah.
he recovered and he did well.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Is that he missed the end of the year, but he came back and did really well at the combine. That I love to see that. That can mean all the difference between these guys at the end. Is that like, hey, I'm healthy, so don't even think about that injury. So yeah, I like
Luke
this guy.
Lachey.
Yes, dude, Iowa. Literally, my rank, like somebody on my, I posted on Reddit, and the top comment was like, "I'm drafting Luke Lachey because he went to Iowa. No other notes." And
Sometimes it's that simple.
I was literally like, I was like, that's legitimately a good take
But
at
here,
this
look
stage.
at right now at the combine. Tory Horton ran a 4.41 and logged a 9.83 relative athletic score. So we're looking at a 98th
There you
percentile
go, dude.
athlete here coming off of the injury.
Right, exactly. And he transferred too. I forget. Do you? He wasn't there
Was
the
it
whole time.
UNLV maybe?
Yes, it was
I
Nevada.
forget.
No, it was Nevada. It was Nevada.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, close enough. Same state. Um, so yeah, I mean, just even being in the neighborhood is good enough, dude. When we're
Right.
getting down to the Tory Hortons here. Okay, here we go.
Finally got our S tier.
Here we go. Travis Hunter, man. Like everyone knows the deal, but what's your stance, man? Like we know who this player is. Freakazoid, played offense and defense. Otani, football Otani. What are you thinking, man?
He's the S tier guy for me. He's in a tier of his own.
He has to be S tier. He
Yeah.
has to be.
I mean, this guy's probably getting drafted second overall. Like it'll be a
Right.
miracle if he falls to three. That's how good this guy is. Heisman Trophy winner, and I will say I was scared. I was a coward early in this process. I had him as like my wide receiver 7 because I'm like, oh, what if he plays quarterback?
Me
I
too.
don't care anymore.
I'm moving. Yeah, I had him. Same thing. I had him like wide receiver 5, and he's if he plays wide receiver, he's wide receiver 1.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it seems like teams are viewing him as a wide receiver mostly, and he said he wants to play both sides of the ball or he's going to retire. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to have him in nickel packages on defense? Is he going to play full time? But I think even if he is in a situation where they say, "Hey, you're going to be a full time, like you're going to be our number one cornerback, and we're going to give you like 8 to 12 snaps per game on offense," you better believe when they bring him in on offense, they're going to be focusing on him and they're going to be
Of
getting the
course.
ball to him, and he's just going to break yard per route run and target per route run metrics. So I'm not overly concerned about it. You look at the ball skills this guy has, his athleticism. It's hard to put him anywhere besides that. I think his ceiling is, Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, one of those guys who's just putting up 25 points per game.
Right. Deion Sanders went to college to find, and if you're Deion Sanders, you attract the other Deion Sanderses out there, and he found a Deion Sanders, and he found
Yep.
a Bo Jackson,
Yep.
whoever you want, Michael Jordan playing, except for if Michael Jordan was good at baseball. Like this guy is just a freak. He's just totally different.
Have you
And
seen him play basketball? Have you seen those clips going around where he's
I
like
now
throwing down
I haven't
LeBron
seen.
dunks on a basketball court?
I have to see it now, dude.
Dude,
I can only
he's
imagine.
insane.
I love watching the football players just dunk because I watched like so many clips of uh dude, who is that big Panthers wide receiver that completely that oh now I can't remember his name, but I've watched so many clips of him just jamming, dude. I'm like, he's gotta be good.
Bingo?
No, it wasn't me. It was a while back and he totally flamed out. And he went to the Packers very briefly at the end
Oh,
of
the
his
guy who
career.
became a tight end. I'm drawing a blank
Yes,
too. I
yes,
know
yes, yes, yes,
exactly who
yes,
you're
yes, yes.
talking about. Yeah, put on a
Yes.
bunch of weight. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But
On
like,
the tip of my tongue.
I was like, he's got to be good, dude. But like, yeah, but still, like, this guy's just a freak. He's awesome. And And again, when he goes to the Patriots, a team that has a history of using guys both ways with Marcus Jones and Julian Edelman and Troy Brown, and the head coach was a linebacker who caught 10 touchdown passes,
Mhm.
like they'll figure out how to use it. So
It's
I'm
Kelvin
fan
Benjamin, by the way, right?
Calvin Benjamin. That's
Yeah,
oh no, it
that's a name I
wasn't.
haven't heard in a long
Yes, it was. It
time.
was Calvin Benjamin. Yes, and them. And again, it's a real shame because he had a great rookie year, but yeah. Okay, well, after talking about such a phenomenal player, let's talk about
Yeah.
Tez Johnson. This is a guy I alluded to earlier on the show because I said low BMI, not the end of the world. This guy weighs 154 pounds, which professional football playing, very difficult at that size. Very few guys. I can't even remember another player. Maybe Tutu Atwell was that just the pure low weight of 150 pounds is like very, very low. And we've seen guys like Tank Dell. The biggest problem that I run into, Kluge, before I hear your thoughts, because you can pump this guy up, but the biggest problem I run into is that these guys are usually so bad at run blocking that you just
Mhm.
cannot have them on the field for every single play. Like Wandale Robinson grades out outside the top 200, and he's big. Rondale Moore just was
He was a
great.
tank, though. Rondale Moore is, like, short and stout.
Yeah, yeah. But even he was really struggled at blocking the NFL, was racking
Right.
up penalties, so
Mhm.
ended up just being a part-time guy. Tez Johnson.
He's tier D for me.
Good. Yep, me too.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Tez Johnson. You know, he's got that jitterbug ability.
Of
You know,
course.
he's fun to watch when you watch him on film, but like you said, the size and then the only thing worse than being very small is being very small and then also being relatively unathletic. And he did not have himself a good combine either. I could see this guy maybe carving out a role for himself on special teams, but I think you know, we look at the lofty comp is Tank Dell. You know, that's what everyone says. Well, Tank Dell was able to succeed. Tank Dell suffered back-to-back season-ending injuries, largely in
Yes.
part because of his size. So I think that's the
Right.
concern when you're a 155 player going to play on an NFL field. Your body just can't withstand that sort of punishment. So yeah, I'm very low on Tez Johnson.
Right. It's like Newman from Seinfeld's character in Space Jam when he's like, "I'm not fast, but I'm slow." It's like I got nothing for you, dude. You know, but like a lot of heart. You got to root for guys like that. But 100, it's just 154 pounds is playing professional football is crazy. Kyle Williams here. This is a guy steaming up boards. This is the guy that transferred from UNLV.
Yes,
Transferred from UNLV to Washington State. Very kind of a weird profile, man. Played out wide as not very big guy, but also wasn't a field stretcher really. Like he wasn't doing a lot of deep balls. So this guy's kind of a mystery box. And again, there are people that really like this guy, like Dane Brugler and a few guys. People really, really like this guy.
Chris Sims had him as wide receiver 3 in the class.
I've been seeing like charts where he's just so high, and I'm just like, I'm willing to entertain it.
He's inside my top 10. I like him quite a bit. I've got him in between Jayden Higgins and Jack Bech. So in that tier B there. And like I said, the tier
Yeah.
B is kind of a big one for me. A lot of guys with wide ranges of outcomes. But Jeff Bell turned me on to Kyle Williams a few months ago. And I think the first thing is like he just plays with the swagger of a wide receiver one. Like this dude does not lack confidence. Like you said, he's a little bit undersized, but you wouldn't really know when you first start watching him play. He's big. I mean, he plays bigger than he actually is. He's very physical. He's got the speed. He's got the tenacity after the catch. He's one of those guys that I've said this about a few guys, but the more I watch, the more I like. And Kyle Williams has been a guy who first batch of rankings was right around wide receiver 20 for me and has been creeping up to inside my top 10 now. We're getting a lot of steam that he could potentially be a round 2 pick.
I'm starting to get the feeling that I got with this guy around Josh Downs. We're
Mhm.
like everybody's just saying, like again, the people that are actually like regional scouts and are like close to the guy are just like, this guy's a dog. And everyone's like, oh well, this and that. And they're like, well, he's just a
Yeah.
dog. He's a baller. Like I had Brandon
On the tape
Huffman
nerd.
on. Yeah, I had Brandon Huffman on my show a couple years ago, and that's what he said. He was like, we were talking about tight ends, and he's like, I was like, what's the first thing you look for? He's like, first thing I look for is whether they have that like mentality to just like be the man. And I was like, well, can you give me an example? And he's like, there's two brothers, Josh Downs and Caleb Downs, and these guys are just like savages. He's like, it doesn't matter how big they are, fast they are, whatever it is. He's like, these guys are just like they have it, like they'll kill you. And I was like, okay. So and like
Ayomanor's another one of those guys that, like,
right,
what he
yeah,
lacks in size, he makes up for in tenacity, and Kyle
yeah,
Williams is a lot like that.
yeah, like just catching balls on the jugs machine until like your hands are falling apart. Like they said that about Michael Irving used to make the backup quarterback throw him like before like jugs machines, throw him
Yeah.
200 slant passes until he caught 200 in a row. So
Oh my god.
if he dropped when he had to go again, and they said that one time he dropped two, and the quarterback that was throwing him the passes was throwing up because he was so exhausted from just throwing the passes. So, like, that's the kinda, like, freaks that we're talking about here. Oh, looks like trouble just showed up in the chat. Joey right in the house. Okay, let's get to another name here that, again, divisive type player, along with Jayden Higgins. Tet McMillan is kind of classified as a true split end type,
Mhm.
big-bodied outside wide receiver. If you need that, this is the guy that's gonna go first, most likely, for that type of player. Travis Hunter could probably going to go first, definitely going to go first in terms of just the NFL player. Somebody might go for Egbuka or Burden or any number of these guys. But if you're looking for that big body, right? And again, like if you look to a year like 2020, a lot of those guys fell to the second round, and we've seen
Mhm.
DK Metcalf fall to the second round. We saw T
AJ Brown.
Higgins. Was that?
AJ Brown.
AJ Brown, T. Higgins, and Michael Pittman fell. They went first and second picks in the second round, but sometimes these guys do that. But that's where McMillan's at. And again, he's kind of been falling through the draft process in people's eyes. But are you still in on this guy?
I mean, I'm still in on him in the respect that he's my wide receiver too in this class, but I think that a lot of people have him like tiers ahead of everybody else. I've got him a tier below Travis Hunter, but I've got him in the same tier as Igbuka, Burden, and Harris, and that does round out my top five. I'm not going to be sneaking to anybody else inside there at this point. But yeah, McMillan, I think there is a little bit of disconnect between the fantasy community and the draft community because I'm guilty of it. I talk all the time about how good McMillan would look in this Carolina Panthers offense, how it's the X receiver that Canales needs and how it pushes everyone else into better spots. But the reality is his draft prop is sitting at 18.5. And a lot of people are talking about him falling late into the first round. It's tough to ignore
Right.
that.
Right, exactly. I mean, like you could really restore his upside. Again, I talked about the Jaguars. If the Jaguars just got froggy and took him at 5, I don't think they will. But like, or the Patriots or one of those teams. But once you get into that range, I'm not sure there's so many teams where this guy is just going to be like the guy. You know,
Mhm.
there are definitely some spots where he would be a full time every down player. How would you feel about him if the Cowboys took him in that range to make him the split end on the outside with CeeDee Lamb in the slot?
I don't know if that's really what they need right now. I think that
I'm
Golden,
not
who I
asking you
have
what they need. I'm saying let's just say Jerry does it.
I mean, it
It's
would it
just
would be nice. It would be
Jerry,
great
bro.
for his fantasy value. It would
Okay.
be, being the number 2 for Dak Prescott, somebody that they need to step up behind CeeDee Lamb. But Jeff Bell and I just talked about this on Monday's recording of the Dynasty show. And there's kind of this sliding scale where like you want the elite draft capital, but then the further you fall in round 1, the better your landing spot
I
gets. So like,
know.
maybe he
I
doesn't
know.
go 8 to Carolina, but maybe he does go 28 to Baltimore, and then he's catching patches from Lamar Jackson, or maybe he falls to 29 and ends up in Buffalo. Like it's kind of one of those things where we want the high draft capital, but if he does fall late in round 1, then he's a guy who can immediately contribute on a good offense.
Right. I think he would have he's the kind of guy that if he were to go to the Patriots, it could be a tough start because they're
Mhm.
going to ask him to do a lot in a difficult role with a younger quarterback and a brand new offensive coordinator. Like statistically, he might not really jump if a team like that takes him. So, but I like the player still. I'm not gonna. I think there's a lot of prospect fatigue on this player, and I think he's still a really
Agree.
good player.
Yeah.
People are just trying to throw these guys completely out. You know what I mean? It's like if you say a guy should go top 10 in the draft, and then all of a sudden people are saying maybe he won't go in the first round. It's like they just take him and put him right in the trash instead of putting
Mhm.
him where he should be, which is in the tier A in this particular group, where it's like you know he could be a very good player. The thing is, the problem with last year is if we were doing this last year, tier S would have like 4 or 5 guys
Mhm.
because Travis Hunter is there with guys like Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze and Brian Thomas Jr. I don't even know if Tet McMillan is.
I don't think he is. No.
That's what I
I
mean.
think he's a step below them, and that's what I will say, though, about this class is I think so much ado has been made about the running backs and the tight ends, and while there might not be that, elite guy, like, I don't think outside of Travis Hunter, there's anybody that's gonna be a Malik Neighbors or Jamar Chase or anything like that. But there are a lot of guys that can be immediate contributors and can be serviceable slot players and serviceable flankers or guys that could be, second on the team in targets. And I think looking at these tiers A and B that we both have, these are all guys that are going to have paths to relevance as rookies.
Right. Now, let me ask you, what about a converted quarterback at San Jose State in the, Mountain West that just put up crazy numbers when he finally became a wide receiver, because that's what our guy Nick Nash is here. Also great name. So he
Yeah.
gets a couple points for that.
Yeah. Led the NCAA in receptions, yards, targets, touchdowns, but he's 25 years old.
25.
Been in the Mountain West.
The hit rate for 25-year-old wide receiver prospects is damn near zero.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
unless you want to count Devon Vele, which I don't. You know what I mean? Like,
No. I mean, if
I
that's
just don't even
the
know of
best
him.
case scenario for Nick Nash.
Yeah, Adam Thielen, as a guy that, like, undrafted that didn't really do anything until he was 26. Maybe Welker. I don't know, man. We gotta put him in D probably, right?
I've got him in C. I've got him after
I
Felton,
like
very,
that.
very
I
end
like
of
that. I
C. I
like
mean,
that.
you can't ignore the production, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like this guy
You
was
can
the
tell
most
yourself a
productive.
story. Like, in
Yeah,
that range, day 3 guys, that's the whole thing. With day 3 guys, you gotta tell yourself a story. And that's, I think, where I think there is a story there. This guy, maybe he's just a freak athlete. He's a reverse Ryan Tannehill. Maybe he's Julian Edelman.
yeah, he could
Probably not.
be,
Probably not.
or he could be a guy who's looking for work at 27 years old.
He's probably stone smart. He's probably more stone smart than he is Julian Edelman. Just converted quarterback that's going to try and make his way. Maybe he'll switch to, how big is this guy? Maybe he can switch to tight end.
6'3". He's a little too small to be a tight end.
Logan Thomas, tight end. Logan
Yeah,
Thomas is
could
yoked
be.
though.
Maybe one of those
Yeah.
move tight ends, an Isaiah Likely type of
Just
usage.
give us the label in fantasy,
Yeah,
but maybe. Okay, we got a couple left here. Jalen Noel. This guy, I would describe him as above average in everything.
yeah,
Um, and basically at Iowa State, he played like if Jayden Higgins was Mike Evans, he was Chris Godwin,
yeah.
right?
It's perfect. Or if Jayden Higgins was Calvin Johnson, he was Golden Tate because that's who he reminds me of. I see a lot of Golden Tate in
Ooh, I
Jalen
like
Noel's game.
that.
I've got him sandwiched in between Matthew Golden and Jayden Higgins in that tier B right there. And I want to move him up even higher than that when I watch him play. I mean, he is just such an exciting player. Lacks size a little bit, but great after the catch. And what really surprised me is how good he is at contested catches. He had a better contested catch rate on targets 20 plus yards downfield than Tet McMillan did. Like that's Tet McMillan's calling card, a 6'4" flanker who excels in contested catches. And this little 5'10" Jaylin Noel was out here with a better contested catch rate on deep throws. I'm obsessed with Noel. He has absolutely become my guy in this draft. He and Tre Harris are guys that I'm trying to leave every single rookie draft with. So I've got him in tier B just behind Matthew Golden. But the upside is just so high for him.
I accidentally wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, Golden goes
I get
back up there.
confused. I get confused between Golden and Bond. I was like, why? What is Bond? I
Oh,
was like, what
yeah,
is
yeah.
Bond
It's
doing up
tough.
there?
Yeah.
Like my
We got
brain
the
was like, what's
Texas
the Bond doing?
receivers and the Iowa State
Okay,
receivers all
so
kind of
we're putting
jumbled
him here
together
ahead of Higgins.
ahead of Higgins. Yep.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm keeping. I'm using my double stamp to keep Elic Ayomanor in the B tier.
That's fine.
So
Yeah.
if we add
Fine.
anyone else to the B tier, we either need to move Golden
Like I said,
up.
my B tier is huge. Like this is what mine looks like. I think the B tier
Right
is
now it
pretty
looks
flat for
fine.
me.
Right now
Yeah.
it looks fine, but it would look cartoonish if we put 2 more guys in here. So keep
I'm
that in
putting one
mind.
more guy. Out of the next 3
We'll
we have,
see.
one more guy's hitting the B tier. All right.
I might be kicking Bech down to C tier. No, we can't. Okay, Xavier Restrepo, pure slot guy. I
Ugh.
don't know why he ran at his pro day or combo. Like I don't know why he ran at all because he ran super slow. I like rooting for the guy, but I don't know. What do you think about him?
I've got him right ahead of Nick Nash in tier C. So,
Yes, good.
yeah, he's one of those guys. Jeff Bell made a really good point. Like, we love slot receivers, but the NFL doesn't draft slot receivers
No.
high. Like, nobody's spending a round 2 pick to draft Xavier Restrepo and put him in the slot. He's going to fall to day 3, and if he falls on a team that's desperate for a slot receiver, he could find a path to relevance, but it's not a profile you want to bet on long term.
Right. The only time they draft a pure slot receiver is if they're drafting him like for special team. Like when you have the
Right.
floor of playing special teams, they can. And again, it usually doesn't work. Drafting for floor of special teams and slot is how you draft Andy Isabella over DK Metcalf. So it's just bad. It's a
Exactly.
bad idea. Jalen Royals, Utah State, crazy production over like before he got hurt.
Mhm.
Uh, like what do you have like in 4 games? He had like a cartoonish number of like yards and like, it was just nuts. The production he had over that very short span, which has me always intrigues me. But he also got hurt. I don't know where you at with Royals.
I've got him right ahead, or I'm sorry, right behind Ayomanor. So the very end of tier B there. This is the last guy I'm putting in tier B. And like I said, this is
Okay,
kind of a flat, wide tier. Royals was a guy I liked a lot, but it has been eerily quiet since the combine. I don't know
yes,
what happened. I mean, he had a decent combine. He had a really good Senior Bowl week, but we haven't really heard much about that. And I want to say no news is good news, but also for this close to the draft and there's no steam going around Jalen Royals, that starts to concern me a little bit.
right, yeah. I mean, like that stretch was just so crazy. But yeah, I'm fine. I'm cool with him there. It looks all right here. And I think again, like when you look at and Cleveland Sports asked in the chat, I assume we'll revisit this post here, this post draft. Yeah,
Yeah.
we definitely will, and maybe we'll even do it in the tier maker. But my rankings always include draft capital. Everyone's should.
Hmm.
Like you
Hmm.
should definitely include. I wrote an article on draft narrative that just discusses like how the draft progresses. It really actually talks a lot about that T Higgins Michael Pittman draft and how Denzel Mims, like the Jets traded back instead of taking him and then took him later. And then people still post draft ADP, he was still going ahead of Michael Pittman. It's like people just completely ignored what happened. And I think that's a bad idea. So we're always going to look at the draft and we're going to circle back and finish this up and do it that way. So maybe Kluge will be kind enough to come on and we'll just tanker it up in like a quick, 10, 15 or something. But last one here, and it's the wildest one for sure. Savion Williams. I mean, there's only one comp, right?
Cordell Patterson.
Cordell Patterson. Like this guy is just 6'4", 222. If he could bulk up and play tight end, again, that's like my call. That's my cartoonish calling card is just to try and turn everyone into a tight end. But like, you know, this guy, freak athlete. We call him Cordell Patterson because he got a ton of carries, dude. They were
Mhm.
just handing this guy the ball, manufactured touches, but at the same time, it's like some of these guys, like think back to Tavon Austin. Like Tavon Austin said the playbook looked like Spanish. He couldn't figure it out. They were just pinning the ball to his chest like a note on Ralph Wiggum. You know what I mean? Just like here, like just take this and go because you're not smart enough to like handle the plays. I'm not sure if that's this guy, but like not a lot of like real production. It's a lot of Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they
but
did everything
but
with him. Like, he was their wildcat quarterback, he was their fullback, he was their tight end, he was slot, he was out wide, like, he really did it all at
which
TCU.
is kind of sick though. At
It's
the
kinda
same
cool,
time,
but, how often do you see those positionless players actually pan out in the NFL? So here, I'll full disclosure, had we recorded this show Monday, he'd have been in tier D for me, but I did a show with Matt Waldman yesterday, and we talked about Savion Williams for about 20 minutes. Enough that Matt convinced me to bump him up a little bit in my ranking. So I've got him in between Felton and Restrepo in tier C. And, I think a lot of it's going to come down to draft capital. Like if a team drafts him in the 3rd or 4th round, you assume that they're going to have plays for him. They're going to want to develop him. He's going to be a part of the offense. If he falls into round 5, 6, or 7, then that's team just saying, what the hell? Why not just throw a dart on this kid? So I think draft capital is going to be huge for him. But Matt talked about him being a better running back than he was a wide receiver, and that he does have some ball skills when he's catching the ball through traffic, but that Matt was really surprised by his instinctual running abilities, especially between the tackles. So he talks about, we saw Cordell Patterson break out in year 9. He sees Savion Williams following a similar but much shorter trajectory where he can kind of be that utility Swiss knife type of player for an offense right out the gate.
Walton has a good eye for that stuff.
Mhm.
So I think that's
Know who his
interesting.
comp was? It wasn't Cordero Patterson. Deuce McAllister is who he comped him to.
That's crazy deep, weird pull. Can you
I
imagine if
don't hate
I
it
just
though.
can you imagine if I just randomly said Deuce McAllister?
I see a lot of Deuce McAllister this year.
I also see it. Like, no, of course, you're the only person that sees that. I see a lot of Denard Robinson. That's what I see from
I
this
love
guy.
that
Like,
too,
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Denard
So
Robinson with his shoes tied.
here are the tiers. Who we move in here? I kind of want to do this.
Yeah,
I kind of want to do
I'm
that.
fine with that. I'm fine with that one.
I just don't see any. Dude, again, I hate to tempt the fate of these guys, of the dogs, because this guy is that's the argument for him. Like, I love his tweet that's like, no more stopwatches. Let's put the
Right.
pads on and like crunch it. I'm not even sure what he said, but it was basically that, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, and which I love that, but at the same time, it's like it has a little bit of that energy of like, I've never been in a fight, but I would totally win. You know what I mean? Like,
Except that, the fight Restrepo was in was being Miami's all-time receiving leader. Like, he did kind of put it on film, and he put it
true.
on this, but yeah, that testing is tough to
I'll
overlook.
put him
I
back.
think you're fine. I think you're fine keeping
No, I think
Restrepo
those
down there,
tweets,
yeah.
his tweets, put him back. They put him back there. I just feel like we should have that we should have more in tier D, but I don't know who to put there. And the thing is, there's a lot of
That's the
guys
problem. I
out
mean,
there.
yeah, there's a lot of guys that we could put in tier D, if we wanted to talk about, Jimmy Horn and,
Yeah.
Arian Smith and Isaac Tesla and Ricky White. Yeah, there's
Isaac
a lot of other
Tesla's
guys.
interesting, dude. I
I mean,
mean,
athleticism off the charts. That's
his
fun.
hair is incredible, dude. So
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go super, super
we
deep, so
didn't.
that's
We
why we
could have gone
don't have
deeper.
yeah, sure, we could throw Brew McCoy in there if you wanna draft up
Well,
his headshot real quickly.
well, that's a pretty good plug for you guys' draft guide because I checked it out. It's awesome. It's actually free. And I mean, dude, how many wide receivers you guys rank? 50? Are there 50? There's at least 40.
Yeah, I don't know that we've got 140 players total, and we had more wide receivers than any other position, somewhere between 40 and 50 wide receivers, yeah.
54. I
Yeah,
have it
that
up.
sounds
I have
yeah.
so
Thanks for doing
54.
the work for me, yeah,
So if you
54
want
wide
the
receivers deep.
information on Jackson Meeks and Josh
Kanata Mumfield and Rock Taylor and
Rock
Isaiah Nayer,
Taylor,
we
not a
gotcha.
Mumfield. I mean, like, let's just take everybody from this. Elijah Badger. Everybody, I'm just gonna highlight the guys with the names that are awesome. Like, sorry, Daniel Jackson, you're getting moved
I mean, I'm
down.
not gonna lie. I drafted a lot of Amon St. Brown his rookie season just because I said, "What a cool name,"
That's
and
what
I
I'm
need
saying.
somebody to draft in round 5.
Keandre Lambert Smith. You know, so
Shamir
there's
TK. There's some fun names.
you
Yeah,
gotta take stabs on some of those names there. But yeah, absolutely, definitely go check that out. What else you got going on? Let people know.
dude, I've been busy,
You've
busy,
been doing
busy.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing 2 episodes a week with Alfredo Brown on the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm doing 2 episodes a week on the Dynasty Football Show with Jeff Bell, and then I haven't actually said this on a live show yet, so an exclusive here for you, Coop.
Exclusive.
In 2 weeks, I'm bringing back the Launchpad. I don't know if you remember that. It was a show that I did from 2000 to 2023. 2-time finalist for Best Football Podcast. I'll be doing that. So, Coop, be prepared to talk real soon because I'll be reaching out to you to be one of my first guests on that show.
This time around, do I get to be the famous guest? Because the first
You
time,
know, we're changing it up a little bit. I'm only going to do one
okay,
guest a week. It's going to be kind of a similar vibe to like Sigmund Bloom's on the couch, where it's like me and
okay,
one guest a week. Scheduling with 2 guests, it was fun and I enjoyed doing it, but the scheduling was
it's a pain.
so
Oh, it's the worst, dude.
difficult. Trying to
It's the
schedule with
worst.
multiple guests is so hard.
Trying to schedule one guest is tough. That's why it's like I got a good core people that I can trust to like
Yeah.
show up and be here on time and have a microphone that works, which is a lot of the battle sometimes. So appreciate you coming on, man. You know, guys like you, Theo, I can always count on you. Pat Fitzmaurice is coming on next week. Jim Coventry came on last week. So everybody, keep an eye out for these. Here's the only thing I'm plugging. Last thing, go over to the fantasy football Reddit. We have a draft prop contest up right now. I know you guys were kind enough to donate a couple draft guides. Oh, no, actually, a legitimate subscription you guys
Yeah.
donated, right? So
Yeah.
you can win a subscription to Football Guys, to Fantasy Alarm, to literally every site. Everyone's been so generous. There's autographed jerseys, Garrett Wilson, all sorts of stuff. And the big prize is you can get into the Scottish Bowl, the biggest contest in the world. If you win that, you're gold stamped, you're gold plated. Your buddies can never talk trash to you ever again because you beat everybody in the entire industry in fantasy football. It's true. It's a fact. So go check that out. $5 donation gets you at the level where you can get in. Anything more than that would be great. Last year we raised a bunch of money, so we're hoping to do that now. But that's what's going on for us, for me, for Dave Kluge, for everyone at Fantasy Line, for everybody at Reddit. Thank you guys for hanging in the chat. Like, subscribe, and check us out next week when we do run.